At my son's wedding, he looked me in the eye and said, "Leave now, Mom. My wife doesn't want you here." He didn't whisper it. He yelled it. There were 146 guests in that ballroom at the Lakeview Grand Hotel in Madison, Wisconsin. I know the number because I paid for 72 of those seats myself. $38,450. That's what the catering bill was. I still have the invoice in a folder labeled Family Important. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just picked up my purse. Black leather, scuffed at the corners from years of church on Sundays, and I walked out. Slowly. You could hear my heels on the marble floor. Click, click, click. It's funny how humiliation makes the air feel thin, like someone turned down the oxygen. Outside, it was October 14th. Cold. 43 degrees. I remember because I checked my phone just to have something to look at besides the valet staring at me like he'd just witnessed a crime scene. I didn't go back inside. I didn't text him. I drove home alone in my 2016 Honda Accord, hands steady on the wheel, even though my chest felt like it was caving in. You see, this wasn't just a wedding. It was the final chapter of a story I had been writing for 34 years. My name is Linda.
I'm 62.
Widow. Retired elementary school teacher. I raised my son, Daniel, by myself after his father died in a construction accident when Daniel was 8. $184,000 was the life insurance payout. I stretched that money like dough: mortgage payments, braces, baseball camps, college tuition. When Daniel graduated from the University of Illinois in 2014, I sat in the stadium and cried so hard the woman next to me offered me tissues and asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said. "That's my son." I worked 2 jobs when he was in high school. Taught second grade from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., then graded papers at night for an online tutoring company. I didn't complain. I told myself, this is temporary. This is what mothers do. When he met Emily in 2018, I was happy for him. She was pretty, polished, MBA from Northwestern. She had that sharp, efficient way of speaking that makes you feel like you're always a step behind. The first time we had dinner together, she corrected my pronunciation of quinoa. "It's quinoa," she said, smiling. I laughed it off. "Well, I grew up calling it birdseed." Daniel squeezed her hand like she'd just performed a magic trick. Little things. That's how it starts. Little corrections. Little jokes. Little glances exchanged over your head. After they got engaged, I offered to help with the wedding. I meant emotionally. Maybe pick flowers. Taste cake samples. Instead, I ended up wiring $50,000 to their joint account because it would be easier that way. Easier for whom, I'm still not sure. 3 weeks before the wedding, Daniel asked about the lake house. Now, that house is important. It's a small 2-bedroom place in Door County. My husband and I bought it in 1997 for $126,000. It's worth around $480,000 now. Paid off. No mortgage. It's where Daniel learned to fish, where he carved his initials into the dock, where we scattered his father's ashes. "Mom," he said one evening over the phone, "have you thought about estate planning?" I laughed. "I'm not dying." "I know," he said quickly. "It's just, Emily thinks it would be smart to put assets in a trust. For tax reasons." Tax reasons. That phrase tastes bitter now. I told him we could discuss it after the wedding. He didn't push, but something shifted. The week of the ceremony, Emily stopped returning my texts. Daniel sounded distracted. Busy. Always busy. At the rehearsal dinner, she introduced me as Daniel's mom instead of Linda. It sounds small, but there's a difference. One is a person. The other is a role. On the wedding day, I arrived early. I wore navy blue. Modest. Elegant. I stood in the lobby watching guests filter in. When I approached the bridal suite to say hello, the door opened just enough for Emily to step out. Her smile was thin. "I think it's better if you give us some space," she said. "Today is stressful." "Space." I nodded. I've been giving space my whole life. Sniffing. During the reception, I tried to stay out of the way. I clapped. I smiled for photos. I even toasted them. To love, I said, raising my glass. And loyalty. Emily's eyes flickered at that word. An hour later, Daniel pulled me aside near the dance floor. Mom, can you just not make it about you tonight? My stomach dropped. I'm not. She feels uncomfortable. He didn't answer. Then came the moment. The DJ had just announced the cake cutting. I was standing near the gift table, straightening envelopes, old teacher habit. Emily walked past me and whispered something in Daniel's ear. His jaw tightened. He marched over. Leave now, Mom. My wife doesn't want you here. The music kept playing. People kept talking. But I heard nothing else. I looked at him. I really looked at him. The same brown eyes I used to wipe tears from. The same face I kissed goodnight. There was no hesitation in him. No apology. Just irritation. Like I was an inconvenience. So I walked out. That night I didn't cry. I sat at my kitchen table, poured myself a glass of boxed wine. Classy, I know, and stared at the wall. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A bank notification. Large transfer initiated, $12,000. From Daniel's joint account to an unfamiliar investment firm. I frowned. That was odd. Weddings are expensive, but transfers at 2:17 a.m. feel different. I opened my laptop. You see, 2 months before the wedding, Daniel had asked me to co-sign a short-term bridge loan for a condo they were purchasing in Chicago. $380,000 purchase price. He said it was temporary until his bonus came through. I trusted him. But co-signing means visibility. I had access to certain financial documents. What I saw made my skin go cold. 3 withdrawals over the past 6 weeks. $25,000. $18,500. $32,000. All labeled consulting fees. To a company registered under Emily's maiden name. I leaned back in my chair. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it's legitimate. Maybe I'm paranoid. But then I remembered the estate planning conversation. The trust. The lake house. The urgency. And the look in her eyes when I said loyalty. I didn't sleep that night. At 7:42 a.m., my phone rang. Daniel. His voice was strained. Mom. I need the property papers. No, good morning. No apology. Just business. I paused. I could hear Emily in the background. Whispering. He lowered his voice. We're restructuring assets. It's important. Restructuring. That word again. I thought about the lake house dock. About my husband's ashes. About the 34 years I had given this boy. I thought about being told to leave. About the envelopes I straightened. About the 2:17 a.m. transfer. And then I replied. For words. Talk to my attorney. Silence. Real silence. Then, what? You heard me. My voice didn't shake. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. He hung up. I set the phone down gently. You know what betrayal feels like at 62? It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's the slow realization that the child you built your life around has started seeing you as a stepping stone instead of a foundation. But here's the thing about foundations. They hold weight, and they don't crumble easily. I opened a drawer and pulled out a business card I hadn't touched in 12 years. Margaret Feldman ESQ, Estate and Property Law. I picked up the phone. Because if my son wanted paperwork, he was about to get something much heavier. Margaret Feldman answered on the third ring. Her voice hadn't changed in 12 years. Calm. Level. Like someone who has watched families fall apart over paperwork and learned not to flinch. Linda, she said. It's been a while. Yes, I replied. And I wish I were calling for a happier reason. We met that afternoon in her office on Main Street. Red brick building. Smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. I brought every document I could find. Deed to the lake house, the mortgage discharge papers, copies of the $50,000 wedding transfer, and the bridge loan agreement I had co-signed. Margaret didn't react emotionally. She never does. She read, and then she looked at me over her glasses. When did the financial pressure start? She asked. Pressure? Yes. However, the bridge loan is more concerning. She turned the document toward me. Small print. Clauses I had skimmed because I trusted my son. Clause 14b. Cosigner liable for repayment in the event of default or restructuring. Restructuring. There was that word again. Margaret explained it plainly. If Daniel and Emily refinanced the condo and folded the bridge loan into a larger liability structure without proper notice, I could be exposed to up to $190,000 in risk. Why would they do that? I whispered. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, "Do you believe your son understands the full financial picture?" That question hurt more than the numbers. I didn't know. That evening, I did something I've never done before. I hired a forensic accountant. His name was Carl Benson, mid-50s, wore suspenders and had a habit of sniffing loudly when concentrating. It would have been funny under different circumstances. Sniffing. Money leaves trails, he told me. People think it doesn't. It does. For $4,200, non-refundable, he agreed to analyze the accessible records tied to my co-signed agreement. 3 days later, he called. "Linda," he said, "you need to come in." His office was smaller than Margaret's. One desk, 2 monitors, stacks of files. He rotated the screen toward me. The consulting company Emily had been paying? It was incorporated 9 months ago. No employees, no active clients. Registered to a P.O. box in Chicago. Total incoming transfers over the past year? $214,000. I felt my throat tighten. "That's not possible," I said. Carl sniffed again. "It is. Most of it came from personal accounts tied to Daniel. Some from the joint wedding fund. A portion appears to be leveraged from the condo down payment." "Why?" "Hard to say. But here's the part that concerns you." He clicked another tab. A draft financial plan, dated 1 week before the wedding. It outlined a proposal. Consolidate assets post-marriage, refinance condo, liquidate lake house upon transfer into family trust, reinvest proceeds into growth vehicles. Estimated liquidation value of lake house, $480,000. Projected net after fees, $455,000. My hands went cold. They were planning to sell it. Carl didn't sugarcoat it. Yes, and I would be removed as primary holder once transferred into the trust. My ears rang. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was structural, calculated. I drove home in silence. Every memory of the lake house replayed like a slideshow. Daniel at 10, sunburned and grinning. My husband sanding the deck. The day we spread ashes into the water and promised to keep the house for generations. Generations. Apparently, one was enough. That night, Daniel texted, "Mom, why are you involving a lawyer?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed, "Because you asked for paperwork." He called immediately. "Emily says you're overreacting." "Overreacting to what, Daniel?" Silence. "You don't trust us?" I almost laughed. "Trust? Did you plan to sell the lake house?" I asked. A pause. Long enough to say everything. "It would have been a smart investment move." "Smart? For whom?" "It's just property," he added. "Just property." I closed my eyes. "No," I said quietly. "It's your father." He exhaled sharply. "Mom, this is exactly why Emily didn't want drama at the wedding." There it was. Drama. As if I were a character in their inconvenience. "I need to protect myself," I said. "From your own son?" That question almost broke me. Almost. After the call, I met Margaret again. We moved quickly. Step 1. File a formal notice limiting financial exposure under the co-sign agreement pending audit review. Step 2. Draft an irrevocable living trust for the lake house with a very specific clause. Step 3. Update my will. "Are you sure?" Margaret asked gently when we discussed beneficiaries. "Yes," I replied. "If they saw me as an asset, I would become one they couldn't access." But I wasn't acting out of rage. Rage is sloppy. This was precise. 2 weeks later, Daniel showed up at my door unannounced. He looked tired. Dark circles. Less polished. "Mom, What are you doing? Making coffee, I said. He didn't smile. You filed a notice with the lender. Yes. They're asking questions. They should. Emily didn't come. Interesting. Why are you punishing us? He asked. I studied his face. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm protecting myself. He ran a hand through his hair. The same nervous gesture he had as a teenager when he'd broken curfew. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? He didn't answer. Instead, he tried a different approach. Emily's company is legitimate. It's consulting. For what? Financial strategy. I held his gaze. Daniel, did you know she was transferring over $200,000 into it? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He didn't know, or he hadn't known the full number. And suddenly I saw it. The double betrayal. He had chosen her over me, but she might have chosen money over both of us. I felt something unexpected then. Not anger. Clarity. Sit down, I said. He didn't. Mom, we just need the property papers to finalize the trust. There will be no transfer, I replied. His jaw tightened. You're forcing our hand. That sentence echoed. Forcing our hand. As if I were an obstacle. He left without finishing his coffee. And that night, Carl called again. Sniffing. Linda, there's movement. What kind of movement? The consulting account just wired $75,000 to a private investment group. It's high risk. High volatility. Can you trace ownership? Working on it. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. This was no longer about a wedding insult. This was about control. About financial leverage. About positioning me as expendable once assets were secured. But here's what they didn't understand. I had been poor before. I had rebuilt from zero. I knew how to survive. And this time I wasn't rebuilding. I was fortifying. Margaret finalized the trust documents within 10 days. The lake house would not be sold. Not by Daniel. Not by Emily. Not by anyone without my consent. And if I passed, it wouldn't automatically go to him. Not anymore. When Daniel found out, he called. His voice was different. Not angry. Afraid. What did you do? I answered calmly. Exactly what you forced me to. The real turning point didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in silence. After Daniel's last call, what did you do? He stopped contacting me for 8 days. 8 very quiet days. No texts. No passive-aggressive emails. No, Mom. Can we talk? Just nothing. Silence is revealing. It tells you who is strategizing and who is panicking. On day 9, Carl called. Sniffing. Linda, we've got a problem. But not your problem. I leaned back in my kitchen chair. Explain. The $75,000 that moved into that high-volatility investment group is connected to a leveraged crypto fund. They borrowed against it. Borrowed how? Margin. Even I know what that means. High risk. Borrowed money. Fast growth or fast collapse. And, I asked, the market dipped 18% in 48 hours. I closed my eyes. How exposed are they? Based on what I can see, if it drops another 7%, they trigger a margin call. And if they can't cover it, they liquidate. Liquidate. The word echoed in my mind. That's what they had planned for my lake house. Liquidation. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just felt the shift. For weeks, they had been positioning me as the expendable piece in their financial puzzle. Now the numbers were moving in a direction they couldn't control. 2 days later, Daniel showed up again. This time, he didn't knock politely. He knocked like someone running out of time. I opened the door. He looked thinner. Mom, we need to talk. Come in. He didn't sit. They're freezing accounts. Who is they? The lender. The investment firm. There's complications. Complications. I folded my hands. How much? He swallowed. About $140,000. My chest tightened, but not for the reason you'd think. Is this about the consulting company? I asked quietly. His eyes flicked up. You knew. Yes. He paced the living room. Emily said it was temporary. I almost asked, was I ever included in that us? But I didn't. Instead, I asked the only thing that mattered. Did you know she planned to sell the lake house? Silence. Longer this time. She said it didn't make sense to keep dead capital. Dead capital. That's what my husband's ashes had become. Accounting terminology. I felt something inside me finally harden. Not anger. Not grief. Resolution. You told me to leave your wedding, I said calmly. Because she was uncomfortable. He closed his eyes. It was a mistake.
No, irraplia.
It was a decision. He looked like he wanted to argue. But he didn't. Because he knew. And here's the twist neither of them saw coming. Margaret had inserted a clause into my new trust. If any immediate family member attempted to pressure, manipulate, or pursue transfer of the lake house under demonstrably coercive financial conditions, that individual would be temporarily suspended as a beneficiary pending review.
Temporary suspension.
Legal. Enforceable. Cold. Daniel didn't know that yet. He came for money. He left with consequences. Mom, he said finally, voice softer now. We might lose the condo. How much equity do you have in it? I asked. About $60,000. And the rest? Financed. And the consulting account? He looked away. Mostly gone. I nodded slowly. This is what happens when you build on leverage. He didn't like that. You're enjoying this. That accusation stung more than the wedding. No, I said quietly. I'm surviving it. He ran a hand over his face. What do you want from me? The question hung in the air. What did I want? An apology? Regret? Reversal? No, I wanted accountability. I want you to tell me the truth, I said. He hesitated. Then the words came out low and fast. She said if we could secure the lake house, we'd have collateral. If things went wrong, we'd sell it and recover. Recover. From risks they chose. And if I didn't agree? I asked. She said you'd come around. That you always do. That sentence landed like a stone in still water. You always do. Compromise. Support. Sacrifice. She had studied me. And she had calculated correctly until she didn't. I won't cover this, I said firmly. His head snapped up. You're my mother. Yes. You can't just watch us drown. I looked at him. I didn't push you into the water. Silence again. He left without slamming the door this time. The next week unfolded exactly as Carl predicted. The market dipped another 9%. Margin call triggered. Liquidation followed. The consulting company's account emptied. I didn't need to confront Emily directly. The numbers did it for me. 2 days after the liquidation notice, Daniel called again. His voice was different now. Quieter. We're separating finances. That was fast. Was it your idea? I asked.
No.
Of course not. She said you poisoned me against her. I almost laughed at that. I didn't say a word to her, I replied. That's the beauty of strategy. You don't need confrontation when facts are enough. Another pause. She wants to move to New York, he added. With what funds? He didn't answer. Then softly, Mom, I messed up. There it was. Not defiance. Not manipulation. Admission. I didn't rush to comfort him. I warned you, I said. You told me to talk to your attorney. Yes. He exhaled shakily. I thought you were bluffing. That was the problem. They both did. The condo went on the market within 3 weeks. Sold below asking. They covered part of the loan, but not all. Daniel had to take a personal loan to settle the remainder. Emily's consulting company dissolved quietly. No lawsuit. No public drama. Just disappearance. And through all of it, I never raised my voice. Never sent an angry email. Never told relatives. I let the law and the numbers speak. The final twist came 1 month later. Margaret called. There's been an inquiry from Emily's former investment partners. About what? Potential misrepresentation of funds. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The strategy had worked. Not revenge through destruction. Revenge through insulation. I didn't destroy their future. I just refused to fund it. And in doing so, I forced reality to arrive early. The condo sold in December. Snow on the sidewalks. Gray skies. The kind of Chicago winter that makes everything look temporary. They listed it at $399,000. It closed at $371,500. After fees, commissions, and penalties for early restructuring, they walked away with barely enough to clear the personal loan Daniel had taken to plug the margin hole. Barely. Emily moved out before the closing date. I know because Daniel called me the night she packed the last box. She says I sabotaged her, he told me. Did you? I asked.
No.
Then you didn't. There was a long pause. She says you manipulated me. I almost smiled at the irony. I filed legal paperwork, I said calmly. That's not manipulation. That's protection. He didn't argue, because he knew the difference now. 2 weeks later, Margaret called again. It's official, she said. The inquiry into Emily's dissolved consulting company has escalated. Escalated how? Her former investment partners allege she misrepresented the source and stability of certain funds. I pictured spreadsheets, contracts, email trails. Numbers don't care about charm. They're pursuing civil recovery, Margaret added. Not criminal at this stage. At this stage. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. There's something exhausting about watching consequences land. It's like gravity. Predictable. Inevitable. Heavy. Daniel came over for dinner for the first time since the wedding in January. 3 months had passed. He looked different. Less polished. More real. I made pot roast. The same recipe I used when he was in Little League. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from his plate. Mom, he said finally. Why didn't you just yell at me? The question surprised me. Would that have helped? I don't know. Maybe it would have felt normal. Normal. As if conflict should be loud to count. I didn't yell, I said. Because this wasn't about anger. Then what was it about? Boundaries. He swallowed. I didn't think you had any. That hurt. But it was honest. You were right, I said quietly. I didn't. For 34 years I had said yes. Yes to extra expenses. Yes to co-signing. Yes to sacrificing vacations. Yes to stepping back when girlfriends felt threatened. Yes to being flexible. And flexibility, when overused, becomes expectation. He stared at his plate. I thought you'd always cover me, he admitted. I did, I replied. Until it cost me myself. Silence again. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was reflective. A week later, I received a certified letter. Emily's attorney. A formal notice stating that she intended to pursue equitable contribution claims regarding wedding expenses and undue interference in marital financial planning. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not hysterically, just softly. Margaret didn't even blink when I handed it to her. Posturing, she said. There's no standing. You were never contractually obligated to transfer property. And the wedding funds? Gifted voluntarily. Documented as such. The claim dissolved within a month. Paper tiger. Meanwhile, the civil recovery case against Emily moved forward. Her former partners claimed over $210,000 in misallocated funds. The numbers matched Carl's findings almost exactly. I never testified. I never appeared in court. But my documentation, meticulously organized over decades, was requested as supporting context for timeline clarification. Funny how being a schoolteacher makes you obsessive about records. Daniel called me one night in early March. They froze her remaining accounts. And you? I asked. I'm not tied to it legally. But it's ugly. Ugly. Consequences rarely look elegant. Are you staying with her? I asked gently. A long pause.
No.
There it was. The marriage lasted 4 months. For long enough to humiliate his mother. Not long enough to survive margin trading. He moved into a small apartment outside Milwaukee. 1 bedroom. 3rd floor. No lake view. He sent me the address in a text. No commentary. Just the address. I visited once. The place was clean. You just didn't understand consequences. He almost smiled. That sounds like something you'd write on a classroom board. Maybe I should have. Outside his apartment window, snow was melting, spring threatening to arrive. He looked at me then, not as an obstacle, not as capital, as his mother. I'm sorry, he said, not rushed, not defensive, just sorry. And for the first time since the wedding, I believed him. But here's the truth most people don't talk about. Apologies don't erase damage. They acknowledge it. The lake house remained mine, untouched, protected. The trust stood firm. And because of that clause Margaret inserted, Daniel's beneficiary status had been temporarily suspended during the investigation. In April, after the dust settled, I had the option to reinstate him. Margaret asked me directly, "Do you want to?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I drove up to Door County alone. The lake was still half frozen. The dock creaked under my weight. I sat where my husband used to sit and watched the water shift under thin ice. Generations. That word again. Legacy isn't just property. It's values, accountability, strength. If I reinstated Daniel without conditions, what lesson would that teach? If I cut him out entirely, what lesson would that teach? I didn't want revenge. I wanted evolution. So I did something unexpected. I amended the trust. Daniel would remain a beneficiary, but only after completing financial responsibility counseling and maintaining 3 consecutive years of independent asset stability without high-risk leverage. Documented. Verified. Not punishment. Qualification. Cold? Maybe. But fairness often feels cold to those who expected warmth without effort. When I told him, he didn't argue. He nodded. "That's fair," he said quietly. Fair. That word felt better than sorry. Emily's civil case settled out of court in June. Confidential terms. But from what Margaret hinted, she didn't walk away untouched. And I never once confronted her directly. Not a single screaming match. Not one dramatic scene. The wedding humiliation, still there in my memory, but no longer sharp. Just a reminder. Because the most effective revenge isn't destruction. It's withdrawal. Withdrawal of access. Withdrawal of assumption. Withdrawal of automatic forgiveness. The first summer after everything fell apart, I went to the lake house alone for a full month. No guests. No Daniel. No noise. Just the sound of water hitting the dock in slow, steady rhythm. At 62, silence feels different than it did at 30. Back then, silence meant loneliness. Now it feels like space. Space to think. Space to choose. Space to not react. I repainted the shutters myself. Navy blue. The same color I wore to the wedding. Funny how life circles back. I fixed the loose board on the dock where Daniel carved his initials at 10 years old. DM 1999. For a moment I considered sanding it down, erasing it, but I didn't. Mistakes are part of history. So are lessons. Daniel started financial counseling in July. He sent me the confirmation email without commentary. I didn't praise him. I didn't critique him. I simply replied, "Good." 3 months later, he called. "I paid off the personal loan." "That's good," I said. "I'm not leveraging anything anymore." I smiled softly to myself. "That's better." He laughed, quiet, self-aware. "You sound like a judge." "No," I said. "Just a mother who learned to stop rescuing. And that's the part no one tells you. Rescuing feels loving, until it becomes enabling. For years, I confused support with sacrifice. I believed unconditional love meant unconditional access. It doesn't. Love without boundaries becomes currency. And I had unknowingly allowed myself to be spent. The wedding humiliation, it still exists in my memory. The music playing. The guests pretending not to hear. His voice raised. "Leave now, Mom." But when I replay it now, something has changed. I no longer see a powerful son rejecting me. I see a young man trying to prove loyalty to the wrong person. And I see a woman who finally stopped trying to be chosen. Because here's the philosophical truth I've arrived at. Betrayal is rarely loud at first. It begins in small permissions. Small compromises, small silences. You give a little, then a little more, until one day, someone believes your foundation is theirs to move. That was the real lesson. Not about money, not about marriage, about positioning. I repositioned myself, from passive to deliberate, from emotional reaction to strategic pause. That morning when he called asking for the property papers, those 4 words weren't revenge. They were awakening. Talk to my attorney. Not dramatic, not cruel, just final. And that finality changed everything. Emily eventually moved to New York. Last I heard, she was working in corporate restructuring. There's irony in that, but I won't dwell on it. I don't wish her ruin. I wish her reflection. Daniel and I now speak once a week. Not every day, not about everything, but honestly, he completed his first year of stable finances without high-risk investment. 1 down, 2 to go. He asked me last month, "Do you think you'll ever fully trust me again?" I thought carefully before answering. Trust, I said, isn't something you return to. It's something you rebuild. He nodded. He's learning that actions carry weight. That leverage cuts both ways. That security isn't created by grabbing assets. It's created by earning stability. As for me, I sleep better. I eat slower. I stopped checking my bank notifications at 2:17 a.m. I no longer feel the urge to explain myself to people who don't pay my bills or protect my peace. I even joined a small book club in town. We read novels about resilience. I don't tell them my story. I don't need to, because the most satisfying part of all this isn't that I won. It's that I remained intact. Cold revenge isn't about destruction. It's about control. Not controlling others. Controlling yourself. Choosing law over impulse. Documentation over accusation. Strategy over screaming. And maybe the most important lesson of all? The best revenge isn't making someone fall. It's refusing to fall with them. If you're listening to this and you've been betrayed by family, by a partner, by someone who believed you would always come around, pause before you react. Gather facts.
Consult professionals.
Strengthen your position quietly, because silence can be sharper than rage, and boundaries can be louder than shouting. The lake house still stands. The dock still creaks. The initials are still carved in wood. But the foundation, stronger than ever. And this time, it's anchored exactly where I choose.